Will it be the Javonte Williams revenge game? We're about to find out as the Dallas Cowboys come to Denver for a Week 8 showdown. We're talking all about it on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Cowboys.
You are Locked on NFL Crossover, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Little mid-season showdown between the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys here in Week 8. Very excited to break down all of the key matchups, the biggest storylines, keys to victory, all that fun stuff that we love talking about every single week. Got a Javonte Williams revenge angle, got some great matchups between wide receivers and corners on both sides, and of course, we'll give you our keys for each team coming away with a win here this week. My name is Sayre Bedinger. Welcome in, everybody. I'm the co-host at Locked on Broncos here with Marcus Mosier, co-host of Locked on Cowboys. And today's Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Marcus, very excited to break down this matchup. It's been a blast watching both of these teams this season, although I'm sure Cowboys fans have a lot of, maybe disdain from the beginning of the year. You and I were talking off camera. The Cowboys fans kind of slowly coming back around. When you have offensive performances like we saw against the Commanders last week, obviously they're going to start coming around in droves. But give me the biggest storyline from your perspective here this week as the Cowboys head to the Mile High City.
Well, I think this is really a turning point game for both Dallas and Denver going into Week 8. For the Cowboys, it's easy, right? If you win this game, you're above 500 for the first time all year. And while this is probably not a Super Bowl contender, I always have to qualify that. Probably not a Super Bowl contender. If you're 4-3-1 after 8 games, they've got a bye week coming up. They play the Raiders and the Cardinals coming up. Maybe you actually set yourself up to making a postseason run and pushing the Eagles in the NFC East. And for Denver, it's the same thing. You go to 6-2. Now you're talking about not only winning the AFC West, you're talking about maybe being the 1 seed or the 2 seed and having the playoffs run through Mile High. So this is a big game for both teams. And I'm really excited to watch it. I think this is going to be a good measuring stick game for both squads.
Absolutely. I think that's really what's exciting about it is this opportunity for the Broncos to come in Week 8 and really prove, hey, that fourth quarter comeback against the Giants, we can actually maybe put something like that together on a more consistent basis. And it's been a while since the Broncos were in a position to be even talking about maybe having some time to, rest in the playoffs or hosting playoff games. I know that's something that Sean Payton talked about being a goal for this team is to get to the point where after last year's blowout loss in the playoffs to Buffalo, he's like, we got to find a way to start hosting these games. Well, the only way to do that is to win your division. And right now the Broncos do have a 1-game lead over both the Chargers and the Chiefs heading into Week 8. I'd say from that Denver perspective, the big storyline is, can you get that offense going on a consistent basis? Can you prove to be, it's interesting, the perception from the national narrative seems to be a bit more positive about the Broncos than even sort of the local narrative or the fan narrative right now, where a lot of people are still hesitant to sort of buy in fully to the idea that Denver is a contender in the AFC. They've shown they've got an elite defense. They've shown, hey, we could put up 33 points in a quarter. But can they put that together consistently going up against a Dallas team like this? I think almost everybody's anticipating maybe a bit of a shootout.
Well, I mean, it should be. This should be the get-right game for Denver. But I want to ask you a question from somebody who was rooting for the Broncos last week for obvious reasons, right? It felt like watching this team for at least the first half and really the first 3 quarters of this game, everything on offense felt so hard. And like Sean Payton had to try to scheme up ways to get playmakers the football and get Marvin Mims in space and get Evan Ingram in space. And I know I was tweeting out during the game, like, hey, Denver's got to go out and get a number 1 receiver because life is just too hard in the NFL having to scheme offense like this every single week. Is that the feeling, at least locally, for Denver right now?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it there. I think that's been a recurring issue week after week, and everybody's trying to kind of diagnose what is the tension there. Is it Sean Payton and the way that he's calling plays? Is it the play design? Is it the fact that he's changing personnel groupings too much? Is that even possible? Is it the lack of a wide receiver one? Is Cortland Sutton truly a wide receiver one? There's all these things come up on a week to week as you're trying to kind of figure out what's the underlying issue every week. And I think that from what we see at times, this offense starts clicking. It's working and things are happening, and Bo Nix is making plays. But then there's these long stretches where, like you said, it seems like it just nothing comes easily. We talked about Evan Ingram in the offseason potentially being that easy button for this team offensively, and it just hasn't 100% materialized yet. But then you see quarters like the fourth quarter against the Giants, and you kind of think, man, maybe that could be something that this team, not necessarily scoring 33 points a quarter, but, putting together at least competent offense on a consistent basis. It feels like it's within reach for this team.
And for Dallas, it's the defense. The defense looked better last week against Washington. It was the first time all year they actually played some man coverage. In all the previous five or six games, they were running like 0% man coverage. They finally changed things up a little bit, and they had a lot of success against Washington even before Jaden Daniels went down. Now, we'll see about the status of Trayvon Diggs, who got injured on last Thursday at home with a concussion. I'm not sure if he's going to play in this game or not. That still remains to be seen. But can this Cowboys defense be not awful? And that's really the standard that we have for Dallas. Like, can you get 2 stops a half? And if the answer is yes, the Cowboys are going to be in a lot of games because this offense is so good. But because it's been so bad, I think there's a lot of Cowboy fans that think what they saw against Washington last week was really a mirage, and it's not going to stay. So against the Denver offense that's been struggling and been up and down, we know Sean Payton's history against Dallas. It's not been pleasant for Cowboy fans. He's had some of these huge offensive outings before. I think Cowboy fans just want to see some gradual improvement for the defense to get them excited about what could be a playoff run here over the next 2 or 3 months.
What's that number one thing that you would say is kind of the must do or the must change? Like if one thing happens this week for that defense, or if one thing improves even just a little bit, it has to be this. What would that be?
Just being aggressive. Like, one of the things that Dallas has had an issue with under Matt Eberflus is they play a lot of these soft zones, and it's a typical bend but don't break defense. Well, that doesn't really work when you're the worst red zone team in the NFL on defense, right? You're allowing these long drives and teams are getting into the end zone. When you have a high-powered offense like Dallas has, you might as well be aggressive, because if you give up a big score, who cares? Your offense is back on the field. I think that's what we saw different last week. We saw more blitzes. We saw more pressure. We saw more man coverage to speed up the game a little bit. I think Cowboy fans know that this defense is going to give up a lot of points, but at least try to be aggressive, getting takeaways and getting some tip passes or creating some pressure, because that's what happened last week. They got a few early stops. The game got out of the control quickly for Dallas. They ended up having, I think it was a 21-point lead early in the third quarter, and Washington was never able to come back. That's what the Cowboy fans want to see moving forward.
Well, you mentioned man coverage. We know the Denver Broncos play a ton of man coverage, and they've got guys that they trust out there. But this week, those guys are going to be put to the test. We're going to talk about those Dallas Cowboys stud wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, going up against Pat Surtain and Riley Moss in one of the matchups that will dictate the outcome of this game, coming up on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Cowboys. This Crossover Thursday is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like maybe Dak Prescott's passing yards or J.K. Dobbins rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is, and you can make your lineup in under a minute. And one of my favorite parts, PrizePicks just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Crossover Thursday is also presented by Gametime. The NFL season is back. It's in full swing. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by the fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets, it can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It is frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. If you pull up Gametime, just a couple of taps, you'll see the amazing deals that they have. And I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. The app makes it super simple, and you can even view the exact seat that you're going to sit in before you buy the tickets. So download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Denver Broncos cornerbacks going up against the star-studded receivers of the Dallas Cowboys is going to be one of the premier matchups in this game. Also, Javonte Williams getting a chance to get some revenge against his old team. We're breaking down some of the biggest matchups to watch here. Broncos versus Cowboys in Week 8. But before we go any further, just want to quickly say thank you to all of you that make Locked On Broncos and Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day every single day. We really appreciate every single one of you. If you haven't done so already, hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts as well as on YouTube. Marcus, I want to throw it to you. I know that I'm sure you've got some ideas as well here. I know what I'm excited about for this game, but I want to hear some matchups that you feel are going to maybe dictate the outcome of this game as the Cowboys come to Denver in Week 8.
All right, let's save the wide receivers versus the corners. We'll get to that one in a second. I'm as a Cowboy fan, I am terrified of the Broncos edge rushers against the Cowboys tackle. So Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele, the Cowboys left and right tackle, going up against Nick Bonitto and Jonathan Cooper. It's a tough matchup. Now, what Dallas is probably going to try to do in this game is run the ball a bunch so that those guys can't just tee off on Dak Prescott. I will say Dak has done a really good job of mitigating some of the speed rushers that the Cowboys have played early in the year. The game against Micah Parsons was fantastic, making sure that the ball gets out of his hands quickly so those guys can't make an impact. But if you get into these, 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 12s, where Denver knows the ball is going to be coming out and they can just get up the field, I think Nick Bonitto is, one of the top 7 or 8 pass rushers in the league right now. He is just so explosive. He's so dynamic. You cannot let him, Cooper, and Zach Allen dominate this game. So keep an eye on that Broncos pass rush against the Cowboys offensive line.
Absolutely. That's one of the ways that Broncos Country feels like they can kind of neutralize just about any opponent on a given week, right? Is those guys getting pressure. And then if they are having success early in games, then Vance Joseph can really dip into his bag of tricks and start to disguise coverage and start to disguise blitz packages. He'll bring defensive backs. He'll do a lot of different things to try and get those edge guys in one-on-one matchups, which is really exciting. And unfortunately, we didn't see that a ton against the New York Giants. Andrew Thomas had a good game against Nick Bonitto and whoever was lining up on that side of the field. But for the most part, yeah, these guys have had a ton of success. And we know Dak Prescott has been one of the toughest ones to sack in the league. Cody and I talked about it earlier this week. He's only been sacked 8 times this year. That's tied with Bo Nix for the second fewest sacks taken.
And it's not because they haven't been pressured. Like, he's been getting a lot of pressure. This is where we like to say on Locked On Cowboys that a lot of times sacks are a quarterback stat, right?
Yep.
If you got a quarterback that's really good at avoiding sacks, that's where you can limit some of these big plays. But I fully expect Denver to get a lot of pressure on Dak in this one.
That's their hope every single week, right? And that leads really perfectly into this other matchup that we want to talk about, is that if you're getting pressure on the quarterback, it makes life easier for your defensive backs, right? But, wide receivers going up against Riley Moss and Pat Surtain, it's been a mixed bag of results. On the whole, Riley Moss and Pat Surtain are not giving up a lot of completions into their coverage. However, there have been some big plays, some penalties as well. What's your take on this? Because Cody and I talked earlier this week about the fact that this is a great opportunity for Pat Surtain and Riley Moss to really kind of flex their muscles as a top corner duo in the NFL. Going up against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, though, it's not an easy task for any cornerback duo, even if you are the best in the league.
So my guess is that Denver's going to put Surtain on George Pickens and then probably try to use whether it's Riley Moss or a combination of guys to bracket or try to take away CeeDee Lamb that way. Is that kind of your assumption here?
That'd be, I mean, I think it's open-ended at this point because we've seen them kind of do different things. We've seen Pat Surtain shadow certain guys, and we've seen them kind of do exactly what you just said. But I don't know. I guess our vibe was kind of more thinking that Pat was going to shadow CeeDee Lamb in this game. But I think the idea that you just presented is a very interesting option as well.
The reason why it's hard to do that, and I think ideally you would like to have your all-pro corner against the Cowboys all-pro receiver. But Dallas uses CeeDee Lamb in so many different ways, whether it's in the backfield, out wide, in the slot, behind a tight end sometimes so he can get a free release and go in either direction. It's really hard to do that. And yeah, you might be able to limit CeeDee Lamb's production a little bit that way, but I don't know if Denver wants to let George Pickens roam on the outside against Riley Moss one-on-one because, again, please tell me if I'm wrong, but Riley Moss over his career has struggled with some of these bigger receivers. And I think if you're just running go balls and you're running fades to Pickens, I think that's probably an advantage that Dallas would love to have. So I'm fascinated. I think the best strategy here if you're Denver is you just want to mix things up. Don't let Dak Prescott know exactly what's going to be coming on every snap and where Surtain is and where Riley Moss is. I think if you can try to confuse them and move these guys around, that's probably how they'll have their most success. But also, Brian Schottenheimer has done a really good job of figuring out ways to get these guys involved, whether it's playing them in the slot, whether it's playing both guys in the outside and letting someone like Jake Ferguson eat against, maybe some lesser linebackers. The Cowboys will have some answers, but we'll see what Denver tries to do to stop them.
Yeah, that would be a really interesting wrinkle. I like that idea, and we'll be fascinated to see what Vance Joseph ends up doing because ultimately I do believe that's going to be one of the biggest matchups that dictates the outcome of this game is how those DBs defend against the playmakers of the Dallas Cowboys, which of course leads into this revenge angle for Javonte Williams. He's been fantastic for the Cowboys this season. I mean, second most rushing yards in the NFL. His yards after contact is back to the place where it was when he was a rookie in Denver. Broncos Country, I think, looks at this move as a, sort of a win-win for everybody, right? Javonte wasn't doing well in Denver for 2 straight years. He was injured for a third before that. Now he goes to a new city, gets a fresh start. He's playing well, but the Broncos also have J.K. Dobbins on the other side who's been running really well for them. And so you kind of just feel like, okay, this is one of those matchups right here where if Dallas has the running game going early in this game, that's something that you want to shut down. If you're Malcolm Roach, Zach Allen, DJ Jones, and that Denver defensive front, you want to get at your guy, your old buddy, Javonte, early in this game to make sure that Dallas doesn't have a balanced attack right away.
And look, we don't need to kill every team that lets a free agent walk who goes on and has success elsewhere because sometimes there's just a better offensive fit or a better culture, or sometimes these guys need to move in order to feel a little bit of pressure. I think like across the NFL, like Baker Mayfield has talked about how he never would have had the success that he's having now in Tampa Bay if he stayed in Cleveland because he needed that wake-up call. I don't think that's necessarily the case for Javonte, but you are seeing him in an offense that maybe is better suited for him play really well. He's also healthier than he's been over the last couple of years. I think Denver wanted something different. The Cowboys wanted something different as well. That's why they moved on from Rico Dowdle. And I think all parties are happy. Is this a revenge game? I don't know. And Javonte doesn't really talk about it like that. I don't think he's really that type of guy, but I expect him to put up some pretty decent numbers because that's what he's done all year long.
Absolutely. He may not say it, but I bet there's a little lingering chip on the shoulder there. He's a quiet, humble guy. And it'll be exciting to see him back in the Mile High City. But what are the keys to victory in this game? What has to happen if either of these teams is going to come away with a victory in week 8? We're going to tell you exactly what it is coming up on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked on Broncos, Locked on Cowboys. Crossover Thursday is presented by Mazda, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every single model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Marcus mentioned it earlier. It really feels like this game between the Broncos and Cowboys is a turning point game for both teams. The Broncos enter this week 5-2. The Cowboys at 3-1, looking to get back above 500 and keeping pace with the Eagles out there in the NFC East. So what's going to go down, or how is it going to go down if either of these teams is going to get a win? Marcus, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts here? What do the Cowboys absolutely need to do if they're going to go into Denver and get a win this week?
They can't let Bo Nix just dink and dunk the ball down the field. And we know that's what Sean Payton wants to do. He wants to throw 55 screens in a game, get the ball to his playmakers, and let them try to make plays after the catch. The Cowboys can't do that, right? They've got to force the issue. Make Bo Nix hold on to the ball and challenge these these cornerbacks down the field. And hey, if he hits a big play to Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims, so be it. It's going to happen. But you can't let Denver control the clock, have these 7-8 minute drives that lead to points, because the Cowboys, they're going to want to get the ball back and score as well, right? So I would like to see them be aggressive. We know that Sean Payton is going to be aggressive. He's going to call up a good game. He's going to be aggressive on that side of the ball as well. Make Sean Payton play left-handed. Make him do some things he doesn't want to do. And I think the Cowboys could potentially have some success on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was the formula for the New York Giants, right? Was, hey, we'll let you guys do sort of the dink and dunk if you want to try it, and we're going to rally and tackle. We're going to make it difficult for your run game to get going. They had it figured out for the majority of that game, and then all of a sudden, poof, their lead disappears. I know all of Cowboys fans were excited to see that as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I think on the other side of that, the Broncos also want to be aggressive. I think they have to be in order to win, because that sort of playing not to lose mentality comes across in the way those first three quarters went down against the Giants, right? It felt like, okay, you're being overly conservative. You're not pushing the ball downfield all that much. Predictability on offense. This is a week I think the Broncos have to try and be aggressive, and I think they can be, right? You mentioned it. Dallas's defense has struggled this year. The offense really hasn't shown a lot of that on tape in terms of pushing the ball deep downfield. But last season, that was one of their best areas that they had. That was one of the best things that Bo Nix did, was completing those big chunk plays downfield and flipping field position. That's something that we want to see the Broncos do this week, and I feel is going to be essential to them winning the game. Of course, you can come back to all the classics, right? You want to win the turnover battle. You want to run the ball well, especially at home, all those sorts of things. But for the Broncos offense, I think showing that sign of, hey, we can push the ball downfield and we can be aggressive and hunt for first downs, hunt for touchdowns, hunt for 20-plus explosives. That's something that I think they've got to do in order to win this game against a team that, hey, they can strike back at any point.
And for the Cowboys, you've got to start this game off fast. And all of their other games that they've played in Denver over the years, it seems like they are always getting down 10-0, 14-0. And it's just too hard when you're playing in that altitude to try to come back from those deficits. We saw Dallas last week for the first time all year. They took the ball in the opening drive, except for week one against Philadelphia. They went right down the field, scored a touchdown, and that set the tone, right? You've got to start this game out fast. You don't need to have a big lead, but you cannot get behind and let those Broncos pass rushers tee off. Again, I expect Brian Schottenheimer to be aggressive in this game. I look for Dak Prescott to take his chances down the field. They don't feel like there's any cornerback room in the NFL that can stop CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So don't be shocked if Dak Prescott and those guys are challenging Denver secondary right away.
I think those guys have to expect it, and I think they have to respond quickly to that. I don't think they should be caught off guard by that for sure. Another interesting wrinkle here, Marcus, I want to get your thoughts on quickly before we close out today's show. I feel like a win this week, and maybe just winning this week isn't necessarily the thing that's going to tip the scales, but the trade deadline is looming, right? And I think a win this week for either team in a game that you mentioned, hey, this could be a turning point for both teams, or this could be something that swings the pendulum, very firmly in one direction. I wonder if a win for either of these two teams here in week 8 will determine how aggressive they are at the NFL trade deadline.
Oh, I fully expect it. If Dallas wins this game, I think they pull off a big trade over the next week. Maybe they try to steal a really talented pass rusher from your division in the AFC West. I'm sure Bronco fans wouldn't be upset about that. But no, you're right. If Dallas were to win this game, I would expect them to be highly aggressive before their Monday night game against the Cardinals. They have a bye after that. If they lose this game, maybe you hold back on some of those trade talks, because maybe it's not going to be the year if you're 3-4-1 after 8 weeks. So I don't think you're wrong at all.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. And like you mentioned, I mean, that perception of the Broncos wide receiver room, if maybe that continues in this game, maybe you do see George Paton take an uncharacteristic big swing at somebody out there. I know a lot of Broncos country would love to see Chris Olave trade his New Orleans Saints uniform for a Denver Broncos uniform, but we'll have plenty of talk about the trade deadline upcoming on our respective shows, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Cowboys. Broncos fans, Cowboys fans, we appreciate you all so much for tuning in to the crossover episode today, and make sure you don't miss a single episode. Locked On Broncos, Locked On Cowboys, we got you covered all season long. We appreciate y'all so much. We'll catch you on the next one.